Here I have two starters that I have left over because I gave the last of my freshest starter to a friend, so I'm going to experiment. I have this jar that has separated and kind of turned color, and it was last refreshed in July of this year, 2016, and it's been in the back of the refrigerator. This is the original barm I made in August a year ago, 2015. It was frozen in the freezer and I let it thaw overnight. First, I'm going to refresh this jar. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Try and get everything from the bottom and measure out how much I have. This is the bowl that I usually do my sourdough starter in because I like to be able to cover it loosely with a lid. So you can see that I have pretty close to 1 1/4 cups of all of that together. So I'm going to pour that in the bowl. Now I'm going to add that much water. This is basically room temperature water. I just took it out of the tap and it's been in the pipes, so it's pretty much room temperature. And I'm going to wire whisk the starter that I'd saved from the fridge to get that a little bit better mixed before I add the flour. I will add that that is a starter that I began from the barm, some of which was saved in the freezer. So now I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of flour and wire whisk that in. And then I'm going to set it in just a corner of the kitchen that is out of the sun, doesn't get too hot or too cold. I've stayed probably throughout winter and summer all within the same 10 feet, just usually over on a counter by a window, but it just depends on the time of year and how the sun is coming in that window. Get most of the lumps out. So there I have day 1 of refreshing the starter that has been in a jar in the back of the refrigerator basically 4 months. And we'll see how that does. I have made sourdough bread practically every month since I made the original starter in August, and I have not had a batch fail at all. To keep my experiment pure, I'm going to use a completely new spatula, and I've rinsed my wire whip. I haven't quite decided how much of this barm I'm going to use, but I am going to go ahead and mix it up a little bit too. I'm calling it barm because the book that I made it out of calls it barm. I mean, you could probably just call it sourdough starter. I have a few people who are wanting some starter, so I am going to go ahead and use all of this. I think it's going to come to 2 cups, so that's going to make quite a bit by the time I've doubled ingredients for 3 days. We will not be running out of sourdough starter. 2 cups. So I will add 2 cups of the room temperature water and 2 cups of flour, exactly like I did for the other, and also set it aside right next to it. There's no point in adding really warm water like you do for bread when you're using yeast to make it rise, because it's just going to be sitting out for 24 hours. It's all going to get to be room temperature pretty quickly. And you wouldn't want it too hot anyway, because you would kill your starter, and if it's too cold, it just slows things down. So that's why I do the room temperature water. I'm mixing in that barm. This barm was less chunky than the 4-month from the back of the refrigerator, so it's mixing in a little more easily. But I don't have the flour in yet. I'll get that in a minute. So this is my 2nd cup of flour, and I will also wire whisk that in until all the flour is moistened. And there are my 2 bowls. The second one, a ceramic bowl, is covered kind of loosely with saran wrap because I don't have a lid that fits on it. And so now I will wait until tomorrow. It's day 2, the next morning, and this is the starter that was begun from the jar that had been kept in the refrigerator. You can see it's nice and bubbly. And this is the starter that was from the frozen barm, which is also nice and bubbly. You can see it in there. And so now I'm going to go through the same procedure of measuring it and then adding the amount of water and flour to it that it is originally here. You can see both of my starters are quite frothy this morning. I'm going to have to mix that one at least in a larger bowl, and probably that one too, and split them into other bowls. You can see that the volume expands rather quickly when I start to make a batch of bread. I usually start with half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of starter, and I still can make several loaves of bread. I'm going to have to mix at least one of those batches in the metal bowl, but I won't leave it in the metal bowl because the common wisdom is that the acidity of the sourdough reacts with the metal and can either etch the metal and or take on a metal taste. So I've got a few other bowls out to use after I mix it. Now I have enough starter to give away, to make several loaves of bread, and to save. I'm going to cover these bowls, most of them with plastic wrap, the one white one with the blue lid again, and let it sit for one more day.
No, she is not making